Yofi, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. Boker Tov, right here in Rechavia Nachlaot in Yerushalayim. We are going to continue now to learn the Pirkei Avot, Perek Shlishi. I want to thank Raya and Mordechai for broadcasting this shir and hosting it live, and Bezrat Hashem to post it. I believe this is the 500th shir that we are recording now. So this is just, I'm very overwhelmed with emotion that we've reached such a great level. And that means that we have to double and triple very, very soon. And so we look forward to seeing everybody as often as possible over here at our shiurim online, and of course in person too. Last night was a great shiur, Baruch Hashem, in person. We're very grateful, and hopefully Hashem takes away the terrible virus, and we should all be able to have many shiurim, davenings, and events in person. Be'ezrat Hashem. Okay. So please open your Sidur or the Mishna to Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of Our Fathers, Perek Shlishi, the third chapter, Mishnah Gimel, the third Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon says, Shlosha shachlu al shulchan echad, 3 people that ate at one table, v'lo amru alav divrei Torah, and they did not say words of Torah during the meal. It's as if they ate from the meat, the slaughtering of dead animals, which means from avodah zarah, from idol worshippers. Let's say that again. It's as if they ate from the slaughterings of the dead, which corresponds to the idol worshippers. Shneamar, ki kol shulchanot malu kitzoah b'li makom. For all of the tables, this says in the verse, for all of the tables are filled with vomit and terrible dirt, without any space. It's totally b'li makom means without Hashem. In other words, avodah zarah, idols and idol worshiping, is compared to vomit and other types of waste. Aval, however, shlosha shachlu al shulchan echad, 3 people they ate at one table. V'amru alav divrei Torah, and they said on the divrei Torah, words of Torah. Ki'ilu achlu mishulchano shel makom. It's as if they ate from the table of Hashem. The other one is b'li makom, does not have Hashem in it, because it's full of avodah zarah. So there's no focus on godliness. But the 3 people that eat and do say divrei Torah, so Hashem is definitely there, present and revealed. Shneamar, it says in the verse, Vayidaber elai, and he spoke to me, Zeh hashulchan asher lifnei Hashem, this is the table which is in front of Hashem. So we have 2 scenarios. This is the table in front of Hashem. So as soon as a person spoke words of Torah, the table became Asher Lefnei Hashem, became a table of Hashem. Another interpretation, which is brought by Rashi, quoted by the Bar Tanura, he says that the 3 individuals corresponds to the 3 levels of the Tanakh: Torah, Nevi'im, Uktuvim. Anyone that sits at a table should always say Divrei Torah, but there's a special presence of Hashem when there are 3 people discussing Divrei Torah. Another opinion is that it talks about Chumash. The three people correspond to Mikra, Chumash, Mishna, the Talmud, and Talmud. That a person needs to talk about these 3 subjects when we eat at the table. So there's a very interesting question which is brought over here. This question is that we find in the Talmud Ta'anit. Ein masichin b'seuda. We're not allowed to talk in the middle of eating. Why? Because the food pipe is very, very close to the windpipe. The windpipe is a drop forward, and the food pipe is a drop backwards, but they're both pretty much side by side. And so if someone, God forbid, talks while they're eating, then the food might go down the wrong pipe, God forbid. Instead of going down the food pipe, it can go down the windpipe. And therefore, we should not talk while we're eating. So how does that coincide with what the Mishnah tells us, that during eating we need to say Divrei Torah, words of Torah? If you look at the story, the way the Talmud records this, the statement of not eating during, the statement of not talking during eating is that Rav Nachman and Rav Yitzchak were sitting at a meal. And Rav Nachman said to Rav Yitzchak, please share some words. So Rabbi Yitzchak said to Rav Nachman, this is what Rabbi Yochanan said. We do not talk in the meal. Perhaps a person may cause chalila for the food to go down the windpipe and not down the food pipe. So this is a very, very strange statement. Rav Yitzchak is making it as if Rav Nachman does not know the rule that ein mesichin b'suda, that we do not talk in the suda. Moreover, since Rav Yitzchak held that we're not allowed to talk during a meal, so how could he say what he said? He's in the middle of a meal. So how could he say ein mesichin b'suda? Does that not contradict what you yourself, Rav Nachman, Rav Yitzchak, are doing right now? You're speaking in the middle of a meal. And even if you want to tell me that he had to say this because he was just responding to Rav Nachman, so he just told him the din, he should have just said it very, 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 should have said it very concisely. Ein masichin b'suda. We do not talk in the middle of a meal. He didn't have to say it at length. Rav Yochanan said as follows, Ein masichin b'suda, and he gave a reason. He didn't have to give the reason. That maybe Chalila, the food will go down the wrong pipe and it'll be in danger. He could have, after the meal, explained the background to the halacha. So the explanation that the Rebbe says is very interesting. That really Rav Nachman for sure knew the halacha. That ein mesichin b'suda. So when Rav Nachman said to Rav Yitzchak, my friend, please say something. Please share with me a word of Torah. He wasn't just speaking about just anything about any words. He was talking about Divrei Torah. Because according to Rav Nachman, the din, the law of Ein Masichin B'Suda, is only about words of regular Sichat Chulin, it's called, words of just standard words, but not about Divrei Torah. According to Rav Nachman, when it comes to words of Torah, you do not have to be concerned. Maybe the food will go down the wrong pipe. Because we have a rule, it says in the Gemara, that Torah magna umatzla, Torah protects us and saves us from any kind of danger. Now we understand Rav Yitzchak's response. He said, since the whole reason of not talking in the middle of a meal is that maybe the food might chalila go down the wrong pipe, so therefore this halacha does apply to words of Torah just like it applies to regular subjects. Like, for example, what it says in the Gemara about doing a mitzvah, that even though it says in the verse that a person that does a mitzvah will not know any bad, and we also have the statement in the Gemara Psachim that shluchei mitzvah einan nizakin, someone that's a messenger, an emissary for doing a mitzvah will not be damaged, will not be hurt. Nevertheless, the Talmud tells us in a place that there is more chance, that there is a greater chance chalila that there should be a damage. It's different, and you should try not to get into that situation of sakana chalila. Therefore, Rav Yitzchak needed to expand and explain, not just to say the three words "ein masichin b'suda," but he had to explain in order to focus, in order to put a stress on this point, that in a place where there is a much greater chance that there should chalila be a damage, then you have to be extra careful not to talk in the middle of the meal, for example, even not words of Torah. What's the halacha? The Magen Avraham writes that even when it comes to words of Torah, you should not talk in the meal. And nevertheless, it's written that any table which should not say divrei Torah, it's as if they ate from meat from the dead. So we have to say, how do these two things fall into place? How can we balance both statements? On one hand, we're not allowed to talk about words of Torah in the middle of a meal, even words of Torah. And on the other hand, we're saying in our Mishna that three people, that words of Torah were not said. It's as if they ate from the food, the slaughtering from the meat of the dead. We have to say that the intention of our Mishnah is either right before the eating or right after the food, or like it says in the Mishnah Brura, brought from the Medrash Eliyahu Rabbah, that between courses you are allowed to talk. So this is very interesting. According to this, the meal doesn't only mean when you're eating. The meal is a meal. So for example, you come to a wedding and they give you the smorgasbord, and then you have the chassan's tish, and then you have the chuppah, and then you have the first course, and then you have the second course, and then you have the 10th course, etc., etc. So you have a number of opportunities to eat, but between each and also before and after, you could also speak. That's all called the meal. All of the above are the surroundings of meal. Maybe I exaggerated a little bit when I talked about the chuppah, but the point hopefully is clear that meal does not only mean when you're actually eating. By the way, I think this also fits in with the rules of the state, of the Ministry of Health when it comes to Corona, that now that they're unfortunately bringing back a number of the rules over here in Israel. We can understand it because there are unfortunately, this is what I meant, the unfortunate part, of course, that there are many new, many additional people every day that are being infected from the corona. And so they say that you need to have your masks on in a closed place when people are sitting, especially in a small place, a small closed place, except for when you're eating. Because technically when you're eating, obviously you can't put on the mask. But I'm going to guess that when, between courses or before the meal, everybody comes, it might take a half hour or 40 minutes for everybody to come and to sit and to schmooze. And then afterwards, you don't leave right away. So when you're not really eating, then you really should have the masks on. So I'm not sure if the Minister of Health learned this Mishnah, and I'm not sure if he learned the Rebbe's interpretation on this. All I'm trying to suggest is that I'm just bringing sort of a proof where we can see a similar scenario where there is the concept of a meal, but it's not actually eating per se. It's just still the idea of meal, and therefore you can speak, especially words of Torah, and if a person does not speak words of Torah, then that is considered from the food of avodah zarah, from idol worshippers. Then there's another point that we can discuss in this Mishnah, that we say that three people that ate together and did not say divrei Torah, it's as if they ate from the food of the dead. But seemingly, not being involved in Torah, bittul Torah, wasting time from learning Torah, is a very severe concept. And the punishment is very, very severe, even more than just quote unquote, as if they ate from the food of the dead. As we learn in the Chazal, and the Alter Rebbe explains it in the Tanya, that someone that has an ability to learn Torah and does not learn Torah, it says that it's as if he embarrassed Hashem's word, and he went against the mitzvah, and God forbid, he has to be Hashem Yirachim, he has to be killed by Hashem. On the other hand, when the Mishna says that 3 people that did eat and said words of Torah during the meal, it's as if they ate from the table of Hashem. Is that the sachar? Is that the reward that we have for learning Torah? The reward for learning Torah is much, much higher than, quote unquote, just saying, it says, if you ate from Hashem's table. And why only 3 people that ate together need to say words of Torah? Even 1 person or 10 people, why did the Mishnah choose the number 3? And the explanation is that our Mishnah is not coming to show us, to teach us the reward for learning Torah and the punishments for wasting time from Torah. Just rather to tell us what's the importance and the greatness of learning during the meal. So the Mishnah tells us that a table, that words of Torah were set upon it, so the food itself becomes part of the table of Hashem. And this special advantage is also only if there are let's start this sentence again. This advantage is only if there are 3 people at least, because then you have an establishment, kviyut. By the way, in the end of the previous Mishnah, we had the word HaKadosh Baruch Hu kovea lo sachar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu establishes for him a reward. So, for example, when 3 men eat together, you have the zimun. They have the special benching afterwards, where they say together, Rabotai nevarech, the few lines before benching. Once you have 3 people, or the concept of the number 3, there becomes the chazaka, the strength, because it's done 3 times. Or with the number 3, that makes it much stronger. Any spiritual concept which is kavua, which is established, that is a much greater way to have an effect on the materialism. And therefore, Torah that's learned in a way of kviyut, in a way of establishment, during the Suda, that elevates the physical material food and makes it a part of Hashem's table. On the other hand, if a person did not eat with saying words of Torah, it's as if they ate from the food of the dead. Because since Torah is called Torat Chaim, the Torah of life, and without Torah there is no life, therefore this food is considered like from the food of the dead, which is the opposite of food, which there were words of Torah that were shared with it, and that's called Torat Chaim. L'chaim, thank you very much for joining us. Bezrat Hashem, I hope tomorrow morning at 9:15 we'll be able to learn together Pirkei Avot, and then Friday morning at 9:30 Kabbalah Cafe. All the best. Shalom, shalom.